Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on the budget and on the financial plan. We are going to see mainly in this presentation eligible costs and specific budget rules, because the specific part on the budget in the e-form and on the financial plan will be showed to you in another specific presentation. So this one is focused on the eligible costs and on some golden rules for the budget. Let's remind first what we understand by eligible costs. You can have the details in the guidelines for applicants under paragraph 4.5, but let's read together what we understand by direct costs, which is the budget part 1 of our budget in the e-form. The expenditures that you will have under direct costs have to be incurred by each organization involved in the partnership, meaning the lead applicant and the partners. They must be supported by original expenditures document and, of course, by proof of payments. This is what we understand by direct costs. In direct cost budget part 1, we have 7 cost categories. Indeed, we have 6 plus cost category 0 dedicated to preparatory costs. And we will see these 6 cost categories in a while. In the e-form, you will find direct costs, which is budget part 1, but you will also find indirect costs, which is budget part 2. In budget part 2, you will mainly have the contingency reserve and the administrative costs. Let's see some golden rules before seeing each cost category. Preparatory costs cannot exceed 10,000 euros. Human resources cannot exceed 40% of the total budget. And this is a goal. This is a new rule of this call for proposal. So pay attention to respect this rule. No maximum minimum allocation for the other cost categories. Sub-grants cannot exceed 30% of the total direct costs, total budget, and one single sub-grant cannot exceed 60,000 euros. Administrative costs cannot exceed 7% and contingency reserve cannot exceed 3% of the total direct costs. So most of this information is similar to what we had before, except the second point, which is new. More specific financial rules and distribution among partners. Work package 1 is not limited to 20% anymore. This is also important to remind. No other threshold concerning work packages. Co-financing is limited to a minimum. Well, the minimum co-financing is 10%. We cannot talk of limit in this case. You can bring more than 10%. 10% is the minimum co-financing at project level. Minimum E&I contribution by project will be 500,000 and maximum 1 million euros. Maximum total cost of the project will be 1.1 million euros. You know our golden rule, and it is still here in this call. Minimum 50% of total direct costs must be for activities implemented in the Mediterranean partner countries. Maximum 20% of the budget can go to the partners located in the adjoining regions if you have these partners in your partnership. Maximum 35% of the total direct cost can be allowed to one single organization. And these are the main rules that you have to respect when drafting your budget. Now let's see some consideration regarding the cost categories. Cost category 0, preparatory costs, eligibility conditions. They must be incurred after the publication of the call. Remember 6 May of this year and before the deadline for submission. They cannot exceed 10,000 euros and they are related only to travel and subsistence costs and only for the staff employed by the applicant and the partners. There is no way to report any other kind of costs under this cost category. They will have to be proven by supporting documents, and they will be reported during the first interim report. Eligible costs, first category, human resources. They will be related to the actual time worked for the project by the partners and by the lead applicant. They shall correspond to actual gross salaries. We're not talking of net salaries, but gross salaries, including social security charges and other components, if any, in national legislation. Overtime are eligible only for full-time staff. Bonus and extra payments are not eligible, never eligible. Staff costs from non-partner organizations are not eligible, and remember, these cost categories is limited to 40% of the budget. Travel and subsistence, which is cost category 2, they must be related to staff and other persons involved in the project. By this, we mean, for example, speakers or participants. You will also have the opportunity to report the travel cost of your associated partners, if any. The travel costs cannot exceed those normally borne by the organization according to its internal rules, nor the EC rates published at the time of the mission. So pay attention to these conditions when drafting your budget, knowing that if your project is approved, you will have to respect these two limits for your travel costs. Cost category number 3, infrastructures. We are not expecting big infrastructures in this call, not many either, but still you can have, or you have, the opportunity to include in your budget small infrastructures. Let's see what we are talking about. Basic facilities and installations providing services needed for project implementation, including also public works for restoring, adapting existing infrastructure. So we're talking of new ones and existing ones. Feasibility studies, since they are considered under external services, will not be reported under this cost category, but under the other one. The infrastructures must be purchased following specific procurement rules. And for more information on procurement rules, we will have a specific slide a bit later on. Cost category 4, equipment and supplies. We are meaning here purchasing or leasing costs for equipment and durables, new but also used. Very important to remark, exclusively devoted for the purpose of the project. Supplies will also have to be purchased following specific procurement rules. See the project implementation manual, but we have a slide on this afterwards. And finally, a specific rule from this program: equipment and vehicles whose cost is more than 5,000 euros per item must be transferred by the end of the project to the Mediterranean partner countries' beneficiaries. And this is important to consider this when drafting your budget. Cost category number 5, subcontracted services. What can we find here? What do we usually find here? As you can see in point D, the bulk of your project, meaning the essential of your project, cannot be subcontracted. So what we find is usually what we have in point 1. Support technical and financial project management, information and dissemination activities, like translations, like organizations of seminars, of conferences, evaluations, and so on. We also have here the external expenditure verification costs. That should be between 2 and 3% of the total direct costs, and this is new, so pay attention to this. And do not forget to include the audit costs, meaning the expenditure verification cost, in your budget. This is a very important thing to remind. Services will also be purchased following specific procurement rules. And as I said before, you cannot subcontract the bulk of the project to any third parties, including in-house organizations. The sixth cost category is other costs, and in other costs we may find two different things. Under point A, we can find any cost not falling in the scope of the previous budget lines of the previous cost categories, but still eligible considering the general eligibility conditions for costs. And then we will find subgrants. You know that subgrants are a main feature, a remarkable feature of our program, and that many projects use them. We are talking of financial support to third parties, including physical persons, so legal persons and physical persons, to be involved in the implementation of some project activities proposal. So it is important to remember that a subgrant can be awarded, but it is always linked to the contribution to the project activities. For example, the need for involving startup companies to carry out a pilot project. Maximum €60,000 per subgrantee, located in the countries involved in the partnership. This is very important to understand who can benefit from your subgrants. These costs shall be reported to the organization which granted the amount according to the same eligibility rules of the cost category. So mainly what we are showing you in this presentation, what the partners and the lead applicant will have to respect when reporting their costs. The beneficiaries, the subgrantees, will have to respect them the same way. Other costs. Be aware that in our website you can find a handbook for subgrants management. Well, you can find all the information related to subgrants, from a definition to how this subgrants will be managed if your project is approved. So pay attention to this one. It will help you filling in the specific section on subgrants in the e-form. And finally, we have a slide on procurement rules as promised. In our website, we have a dedicated section where you will be able to find several documents related to procurement rules. First, you will have the general procurement rules according to the ENI regulation, and in particular, you will have the rule of nationality, which has to be satisfied, respected by all type of partners. You will then find specific rules for private organizations, and we're talking of private organizations from the EU and from the Mediterranean partner countries. And finally, you will find the procurement rules for public organizations from the Mediterranean partner countries. And then there you will have a specific fact sheet elaborated by TESIM for each of the countries, each one of the Mediterranean partner countries. And we have arrived to the part 2 on how to build a budget in the online application form. And as I said before, this will be the object of a specific presentation. I invite you to check this presentation too. I thank you very much for your attention, and I will see you later in a further presentation. Thank you very much for your time.